Thank you so much for joining us on this program. I'm with Dr. Simon Appleton from the University of Nottingham, invited by the World Bank. You're welcome on the program, sir.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Well, there have been what we may call old parameters of measuring poverty before. What were those, and why do you want to persuade the government to start a new parameter to measure poverty in Uganda?
Right. So we started the work in 1993. So we'd look at what people were spending on food in 1993 and try to find the basket that would give them enough food to do the basic work that they were doing, working in the fields or in schools. And we worked out the cost of that basket, how much money they would need. That's the food poverty line. And then we'd make some allowance for how much they also spent on non-food, like education, health, transport, housing, fuel, clothing. So we got these numbers from 1993, and then every year we've raised the numbers with inflation, with the CPI. So that's the poverty line today. It's based on what people were doing in 1993. But nowadays, when we look at the latest data, what they're buying in their basket, what the food costs, what they're spending on non-food is very different today than what it was in 1993.
So you're saying that in 1993, Ugandans used to spend more on food.
That's right. Yeah,
and they used to spend less on housing and cars and clothing.
Yeah.
But right now, they are spending less on food and they are spending more on clothing, houses and cars. Is that what you're saying now?
As a share of their total income has risen. You know, Uganda has grown, people are better off. So in the total food they're buying, but as a share, it's less. And particularly if you're looking at the very poor people who can just have enough money to buy the food, they're now spending more on the non-food than they would have in 1993. About half the food basket comes from about 7 different items. So it's things like matoke, sweet potatoes, sorghum, maize, meat, beans, those kind of things.
And now?
But within those 7, the weights have changed. So in 1993, things like matoke was very important, sweet potatoes were very important. Nowadays, it's maize and it's sorghum, so that the composition of the basket has changed.
So you're saying you want the government now to change and look at this new parameter of poverty?
Yeah, so we'd like the government has a big survey in the field now where they're interviewing people, asking them what they're buying, how much they're spending, what food they're getting. So we'd like the government to look at that new data and calculate from that data what's the new basket and what's the new price of the basket and how much non-food do poor people need, and to take that to be the poverty line rather than what we did in 1993.
So your assessment looks at borders. We have more borders, more Ugandans are doing their hair, more people are buying clothes, more cars are coming in, many more salons, shops are coming up, supermarkets. Is that how you assess the poverty line?
Yeah, I mean, it's all those things. Basically, Uganda wants to become a middle-income country. And in a middle-income country, the non-food items are more important, things like the consumer durables, the services. But also I think important for Uganda are other things like the education. You know, the government is encouraging, trying to get a lot more people into school, into universities, and the healthcare. As countries develop, they tend to spend more and more money on health, which is very necessary. And housing, you know, as countries develop, their house prices rise, the rents rise.
Is that what you're seeing now in Uganda?
Yeah, so we looked at the composition of the non-food spending, and it's not one thing, it's everything, that all the different items are rising, they're all becoming more important. So it's a general phenomenon.
How then because in the past you have been seeing the government releasing official figures saying the country is growing,
sure.
But when you go on the ground, people don't have money for airtime. People can't even buy even a meal a day, and they're saying the country is growing.
That was always a tension.
Yes, it just doesn't reflect with the local person.
It's a common finding. The feelings that people have about how things are going, about poverty, are often very different from the statistics. And that was the reason to do this work in the first place, that in 1993, some of the statistics, the GDP, the exports, the government spending, seemed to be moving in the right direction. Uganda seemed to be taking off. But people didn't feel it. They felt we're not getting better off. So the government spent a lot of money. Every 2 or 3 years would do a big survey of tens of thousands of people, asking them how much money they're earning, how much money they're spending. And from that data, we can see actually that Uganda has grown, and that people's incomes have been rising. They may not feel it, their money may still be tight, but they're getting better off than they were last year and the year before.
Looking at Uganda, it's an agricultural country. What would you propose for us? Because I mean, if that is what we base on to be able to, I mean, that is what the president is looking at: 1 acre to put up coffee, to put up beans, to put up something. That is his idea, that each household gets an acre to be able to produce a meal, and then from producing a meal, you provide something that you can sell to the market. Isn't that a good approach to end poverty in Uganda?
China, when it started to grow in 1978, for the first 6 years, it focused on agriculture. It reformed the rural economy, got people to grow more, and that helped a lot reduce its poverty. But I think agriculture probably is not the long-term solution, that typically as countries grow, as we said, their needs move from food to non-food.
Looking at oil, Uganda has a piece of oil. Can that take us out of poverty?
I wouldn't rely on oil. I mean, oil is different. The good thing about agriculture is the people doing it who get the money are poor people, they're farmers. Whereas oil, it tends to be very concentrated. It's sometimes called an enclave economy. It's separate. There's a few fields. It doesn't have many workers. The workers may be very highly paid, but there's not many. So the money often doesn't spread to the wider society. I think a lot of it is focus. I think the country has to keep its priority as being economic development, as being making the lives of its people more worthwhile, helping its children get education, get healthcare, and keeping its feet on the ground, just the ordinary business of life. I think that there are traps that countries can fall into, so they can fall into conflict, to fighting over resources, so they fight over oil or they fight over power. And those kind of conflicts can destabilize a country.
Thank you so much for the interview. It has been a pleasure speaking to you. Dr. Simon Appleton from the University of Nottingham.